What's up, guys? Welcome to the Peer Review Podcast. My name is Caleb Davis, and man, has it been a minute. I'm just starting to get back into the swing of things, as you can see. It's been, I don't know how long. It's been a few months. It's been a few months since I sat down and recorded an episode, and I thought, what better time than the present to get back into things, to start coming on here more consistently. I've had a lot of life changes since I last recorded. A ton of changes. I moved to Chicago, me and Ivy. That's my dog, for those of you who don't know. And I have loved the city, loved the area, loved the people I've met, loved work. Like everything's been amazing. Yeah, and adding to that, I started working full time. So that's been definitely a switch up, getting acclimated, getting my feet under me, navigating, work, life balance. There's a lot that comes into play there. So, and then just getting back into my hobbies, as you can see. Just making sure, not to lose yourself in work. That's been my big goal since getting started. But other than that, I wanted to come on here today and to just touch on a few major topics around the league. There has been a lot going on in the offseason ever since the playoffs ended. I didn't give my thoughts on the series, but I was rooting for the Spurs, just being a Pistons fan, that Knicks rivalry. But I'm also not mad at the results. I'm a ton of respect for Dylan Brunson. He's one of my favorite players. I kind of feel like it makes the Spurs feel a bit more human. I feel like when Wemby came into the playoffs, and I'm going on a quick tangent here, but if Wemby came into the postseason, first playoff run, and just swept through the West, not to say swept through it, but, makes it all the way through the finals and wins it all in his first year, that gets a little scary for the outlook on, the rest of the league, the future of his career, his trajectory, because this is the worst that the Spurs are going to be. This team is only going to improve. They're all young. They have so many assets. They have movable contracts. The sky's the limit. They're going to be right back there in the next, hell, maybe next year, but in the next 5, like, they're getting at least one, bare minimum. So it gives some hope, I will say. It's not as bad. But back to the main focus of today's video, I just wanted to touch on a few major topics around the league. Specifically, teams that I am infatuated with, and it's been a very interesting time for me because every team that I have some sort of rooting interest for, all at different levels, are intertwined right now. As far as trade discussions, players moving around, they all have what each other need. And as I continue the video, you'll kind of understand more what I am getting at. But today, I wanted to kick off with just talking a bit about the Pistons and some of their offseason decisions, because they have the Jalen Duren decision coming up. Sar Thompson still is yet to be re-signed. They still have to adjust their roster. They need to add pieces. They need a power forward. They need another ball handler to take some of the pressure off Cade. And the biggest decision is the contract with Jalen Duren. How much they're going to re-sign him for, what they're willing to give up. Because, he had a very, very, very rough playoff series. Very rough. He was rough throughout the entire postseason. And I think that should be factored into his contract. And being a fan, I just like to say, right after the series, you're like, oh, I'm out on this guy. Like, we got to get rid of him. He's, everything you say as a fan, you go to doom and gloom. But one thing I try to remember, and I myself had to remember this and reel myself back in, but he's 22 years old. Bad playoff runs happen, especially for young players. He just made his first All-Star team. He just made his first All-NBA team, and you've seen the progression year after year. So I'm willing to bank on him going in the offseason and just getting better. He's a young player. That happens. You just get better. That's what I'm banking on. Like I said, his playoff performance, rough. Very rough. He struggled to create his own shot. That's not his game, but completely devoid of that during the postseason. Being in the right spots on defense, just his defensive IQ, his awareness. Specifically, though, being in the right spots, always being a step too late. Something he needs to work on. That can be addressed with film, with repetition. Specifically film, though. That's something that can be improved. My mind goes to a guy like Jackson Hayes with the Lakers. He hasn't always been as good as he was last season. And he's not. Him and Duren are different players, different, one's all-star, one's all-NBA, one comes off the bench, is the backup center. I'm just saying that to say you can improve. Jackson Hayes struggled in a lot of the areas that Jalen Duren struggled on defensively, specifically, like the fouling, things like that, can be improved on. So that's my mold that I'm hoping for. That's how I hope he'll improve. But yeah, attacking the glass, things like that. Like they went away from his DHOs in the postseason, making reads out of the short roll, like him throwing those lobs to Asar Thompson in the corner. Like I get a lot of that was schematic, and the Cavs specifically having two bigs, they did a great job of shutting off a lot of the easy things he liked to get to. But they, like, if a defense takes away one thing, there's something else that they have to give up. Like them playing back in the lane and taking away the lob and taking away his immediate roles, like they were encouraging him to shoot short middies. He was not really willing to take those. And if he was taking them, he wasn't making them at the clip that you need to be making them to continuously shoot that shot. Taking those short range floaters, those are things that he can add to his game and just get better with over time. And like I said, I'm betting on him to improve. Now, setting the Jalen Duren piece aside, I wanted to talk about a couple of the names that you've been hearing surrounding the Detroit Pistons this offseason. So the first big name that you've been hearing, and this has been going on 2 seasons now, is Trey Murphy. This is a guy that I personally have been rooting for and hoping he ends up with the Pistons. I think he's just been playing in a bad situation in New Orleans. I think if he came to Detroit, I think he'd almost him and Duren, I'm not sure, because I don't know if we'd pull having 3 All-Stars, but he'd be putting up All-Star numbers. I think he'd be the 20, 22 point per game range. I think Cade would make his life a lot simpler. I think playing on a team where, like, he's one of the, I'm not to say he wouldn't be one of our best offensive players, but it's different going from the Pelicans and having, maybe Zion next to you if he's healthy versus coming to Detroit and having Cade Cunningham next to you. There's just levels to this. I think he'd immediately come over and make us better. I don't think that drop off defensively that everyone's so like. I think he could do. I'd have to do a little more research before I concretely say this, but I think he could efficiently enough fill into, let's say, Tobias Harris's role on defense and do just fine with a superb boost in offense. Like there's always that give and take, but I don't think everyone's this big drop off. I think we'll be fine. The package for him is where I've kind of soured on this deal. You hear names like Isaiah Stewart, Ron Holland. You hear all these firsts. You hear things like that. And the fact that I think the Pelicans, and this is an issue that I think they just have as a franchise, but they overvalue a lot of their players, specifically like these role players, Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, like guys that they have been putting like feelers out for and have had them on the block for like 3 years, but they won't move them. And that's because they overvalue their guys. Like I'm saying, like you hear like that Desmond Bain return, that Rudy Gobert return. And I understand you wanting the most out of your players, but you have to be realistic. The current assets that are available, and just sitting on these guys and continuing to run it back, I don't really get it. But I'm not going to make this about the Pelicans. I digress. The Trey Murphy move, like I said in the beginning, I think would be great. He'd be a great addition to the team, but at what price? Now, a couple other names that we're going to get to, and I'm going to start with the role players, and then I'm going to move into Tyler Hero, because that segues us perfectly into the Giannis trade discussions. But a couple more names. I saw Mark Stein report it, where Kobe White, Isaiah Joe, possibly Zach LaVine, if he were to decline his player option, which I don't think he's going to do. I think he's making like $50 million. He's not walking away from that. No shot. Unless maybe we're like, oh, we'll sign you to a longer term deal, less money, but, more stability. I don't know. Maybe. But one thing I would like to say with this offseason that has been in the Pistons' favor is that the types of players that the Pistons are looking to add are very, very available this offseason. Like they're not a hot commodity per se, like additional ball handling. Like you got guys, like I said, Kobe White, Zach LaVine, Ayo Dosunmu's out there, like things like that. Forwards, like there's just an abundant, like Kelly Oubre, trading for a guy like PJ Washington is possible. Like things like that. There are avenues to improve the roster if we were to miss out on a couple of these guys. Now, the last thing on the Pistons before I move ahead is Tyler Hero. It's really been ramping up that the Pistons are trying to help facilitate that Bucks trade wherever they decide to trade Giannis. And if it were to be with the Heat, the Bucks don't want Tyler Hero. So he'd be rerouted in a 3-team trade, 4-team trade, however big they expand it. But there's going to be multiple teams, and Tyler Hero is one of the centerpieces, and Detroit has joined the race to hopefully bring him to Detroit. And you see a lot of people on Twitter like, no, stay away from Tyler Hero, blah 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 blah. And as a Heat fan and watching him over the past 7 years, I think he would be a great fit in Detroit, especially at the price. His value is a little lower right now because he's been banged up. Like, I think he'd come in, and I don't think him and Duncan, like people say, he fell right into the Duncan role. I don't think they don't have similar play styles in my opinion. Like, Duncan's a catch and shoot, off ball movement shooter at times. Like, and Tyler Hero can do those things, but he can also create his own shot. He's way better off the bounce. I compare him more to like a Devin Booker light. Not the same player, but their games and how I picture Devin Booker fitting alongside Cade is very similar to how I envision Tyler Hero fitting. I think he'd come in, and even that drop off defensively, I think him and Duncan you're splitting hairs with them defensively. I don't think him coming in, that boost of offensive production overrides the potential defensive output that you might be losing. If Duncan, if you consider Duncan a better defender because of his size, because of his IQ, for whatever reasons. I am going back and forth on the package for Tyler Hero, though, because you hear that Isaiah Stewart, Karis LeVert, and the 21st pick. I feel like that's a little much for a guy that is the centerpiece in a trade for a team that doesn't want him. Like, I feel like we have a bit of leverage in the sense that Isaiah Stewart and Karis LeVert to make the contracts work. I understand. That 21st pick is where I'm like, I don't know. I'm a bit hesitant. And then I've seen other offers like Duncan and LeVert. And I do think if we send Duncan out, it's not as big of a, I guess you're banking on internal progression because, we have Chaz Lanier, and he didn't get a ton of tick last year. But that's because of the construction of our roster. There wasn't really a pathway to insert him. Losing Duncan, bringing Chaz in as like a, shooter off of our bench, I just think is a possible segue if we were to lose Duncan. Like, we have some type of fallout plan if we don't go pick up someone. Like, if we don't, I'm not going to say Malik Beasley. I think that's a dream. But like Isaiah Joe, for example, like a guy like that, like there are guys we can bring in to replicate Duncan's shooting. Like, he's a great shooter. Love him in Detroit. I'm a big Duncan fan. Big Duncan fan. Again, another Heat guy. But it's not the end of the world if we were to lose him. I say all that to say, though, if I had to decide between the Trey Murphy package or the Tyler Hero package, I'd take Tyler Hero at that cheaper cost because then you're able to, one, maintain more assets. Like, you're holding on to a guy like Ron Holland who could be used for another trade down the line. Could also just stay and hope for that internal development. And, maybe he just gets better and you can't get rid of him. Who knows? But that's all on the Pistons front. I'm going to move on to the Bucks, and then we're going to finish off with my thoughts on LeBron's free agency. So just moving into the Bucks, this has been a cycle that's been ongoing for the past, feels like the last 3 years. Like, you always hear about Giannis potentially being on the move. It's always a thing. And personally, I'm kind of sick of it. I'm over the Giannis. I just want to see him move. Either move him or don't. I'm tired of hearing about, Giannis may go here, Giannis may go there. Oh, Giannis wants to stay, Giannis wants to leave. I don't want to see the first option. And as a Heat fan, again, I have some rooting interest here. But the first option and the main option, there's been 2 to 3 teams that you keep hearing thrown around: Boston, Miami, and Minnesota. I'm throwing Minnesota aside. They don't have the assets compared to what Miami and Boston are offering. There's nothing. Like, Jaden McDaniels is a great player, but if he's the centerpiece of that trade, I'm not moved by that versus these two. Like, these two packages are just better inherently. But starting off with the Miami package, this trade would gut your roster. You'd lose Tyler Hero. You'd lose Khalil Ware. You'd lose Jaime Jaquez. You'd lose Nikola Jovic. You'd lose the number 13 pick and all of your future picks. You're basically cleaning house to get Giannis. And that's a tough pill to swallow. How I frame it, though, is you bring Giannis into a team with Eric Spoelstra. You can debate where he ranks in coaches in the league. I think he's at least a top 3 coach. You put him next to Bam, and they easily become one of the best front court defensive duos of all time. Easily. You bring him in next to Andrew Wiggins. And let's say you make no moves and you just Davion Mitchell, Andrew Wiggins, Norman Powell. Is that the title favorite in the East? No. Do they have a shot? Definitely. I don't everyone's talking like the offensive fit. And I just like to think you figure these things out. But this is where I have this semi dream, because you hear about Trae Young being Miami's backup plan. You hear about Trae Young opting out of his contract and hitting free agency, and that's likely to sign with the Wizards. But just walk with me for a second. In a world where Giannis returns, Giannis is traded to Miami. You pair him next to Bam, and you work out a sign and trade with the Wizards to bring in Trae Young. I think all three of those guys are at the points in their careers where they're going to try and make it work. Whereas, maybe a couple years ago, maybe Trae Young, and not to single him out, but maybe Trae Young is, I'm not the number two. Like, I'm not the number two to Giannis. I'm the number one, but I don't think that'd be an issue. The offensive hierarchy fits, like, go Giannis. Tyler Hero as your number two, which I think he can be offensively. And then Bam slides in as your number three offensively, which I think is a more natural position for him. And I know his scoring has his, shot attempts, all that has increased as his usage just went up in Miami as they've gotten rid of Jimmy Butler, Tyler Hero injuries. But him slotted as a number three, I think would offensively would be a perfect combination. And we'd have to see it. Like Dame and Giannis were a little spotty at times, and Trae Young's more of he's not pass first by any means, but I think he's a better playmaker than Damian Lillard. So maybe we'll see some better results there. But it's just a thought exercise. Maybe they find a way to keep Wiggins. Then you have Trae Young, Wiggins, Giannis, Bam. Maybe there's something there. Maybe that's all I'm saying. Now, on to the second option, just Boston. The only reason I don't like this move, I think he'd be a great fit next to Jason Tatum. And if you can keep bringing Miles Turner, to come in alongside him or find another stretch center, I love the move for Boston in the sense that Jaylen Brown, you don't actually know what reports are valid, but it seems like he wants to be the number one. He likes leading a team. He's shown and proven that he can do that. And I think the Celtics dropped the ball a bit. Like, I knew this was kind of a gap year for them waiting on Tatum, but I think they could have invested more in this group, and maybe they don't lose to this. Like, maybe if you go get a big man better than Nikola Vucevic at the trade deadline, maybe you don't lose to the Sixers because you have bigs to go against Joel Embiid. Like, maybe that doesn't happen. And I could understand Jaylen Brown's train of thought and frustration where he's like, I just won Eastern Conference Finals MVP. I just won Finals MVP. Tatum goes down. I was the one, I understand. Like, I was the one winning those awards. I've been the one in his mind, not carrying the team, but I've been our best player. I can understand his frustration if that is the case, and this is all speculation. But the Celtics giving up Jaylen Brown and, whatever amount of picks for Giannis, surprising, definitely. But I think Tatum and Giannis would be a very good fit together. I think Giannis would offer Boston. So one thing I feel like they're lacking is a guy that can just get downhill. And because, Jaylen Brown can get downhill, Tatum can get downhill, but they're pull-up shooters. Especially Jaylen Brown likes to play in the mid-range, out the post, like things like that. I think Giannis just adds another wrinkle. And him and Tatum, if you were to run, like, they're guarded by similar players, but I think Tatum is a good enough three-point shooter to where pick and roll with them still makes sense. Like, you try and switch, like, most teams around the league, I'm trying to just think, like, that would be able to guard, like, them effectively. They have a 3 and a 4 that are just that switchable, and that it's a thought exercise, and I'm not going to try and do it now. But between those two options, I think Boston gives him the better shot to win. I think legacy-wise, though, going to Miami would be better for him if he were to win a championship. Because, again, going to Boston, that's Jason Tatum's team. You're going and joining and being second fiddle to him. And if that's what Giannis wants and is okay with, you make it happen, and the Celtics become probably the favorite in the East because you have 2 top 10 players. If not the favorite, second, third. So just something to keep in mind. Now, I'm going to quickly go through the LeBron piece of free agency. I think he resigns with the Lakers. I don't see him leaving. I just don't see it. He's been there, 7, 8 years now. Like, his family's all there. He's on his last year or two, as he's kind of been hinting at. And I just don't see him uprooting. Like, you have Luka, who's top 5 player at minimum. Like, Austin, you had a good squad last year. Injuries derailed you guys. The one thing, though, and I wouldn't be mad at him for walking, because I don't have confidence in the Lakers to build a coherent roster on these guys. Like, I don't think they're gonna. They miss on all their swings, and this is me being a pessimist. I hope things go well. I want to see LeBron on a great playoff team. I want to see him go deep into the playoffs. I want to see his guys healthy, but you can't bank on that. And a couple of names you've been hearing, and I said LeBron free agency. This is also just kind of going to be building around talking about the Lakers as well. But a couple of targets you've been hearing: Walker Kessler, obviously you've heard that for years. There's a path there through a signing trade, or throwing Utah a poison pill offer and them saying, okay, we're not going to bring him back. Khalil Ware, if he somehow shakes out in this Bucks trade, like maybe the Lakers get in on it and they're like, hey, Milwaukee, like, we'll send you 2-3 first, and like some type of package to take Khalil, and I think he'd be a great fit. You've heard Isaiah Stewart, which I'm a little iffy on. Like, I think the Lakers just need good players, but that's a potential. And then Robert Williams and Mitchell Robinson are always names you'll hear. I think they need to focus on, in this order of re-signing, Austin, LeBron, Marcus Smart, and then Luke. I think Rui is expendable with this group, and I could really see him in Detroit. If you can't get like a PJ Washington, I could see him, especially just as good of a shooter as he is. And I don't think he's that. As a power forward on the Lakers, he's cast as like a small forward. He's guarding on the perimeter. As a power forward defender, I don't think Rui is that bad of a defender. And again, I think he'd be a reasonable proximity to, that's not a word, but he'd be a reasonable like approximation of Tobias Harris. Reasonable enough. And just that 3-point shooting is what we're lacking. So I could see that. But yeah, just to tie that all up, that's his first option, returning with the Lakers, kind of running things back, but trying to add a center, trying to add pieces and building from there. Or you have the Warriors route, which I am personally more infatuated with, just off the simple fact that Curry also has not been on a good team. And as these guys age, like, you want to see them in the playoffs. You want to see them in high leverage moments. You want to see them in big games. And LeBron and Curry, like we saw it in the Olympics, that is like an upper echelon pairing of players. Like, their skill sets fit perfectly together, even at these phases in their career. And they don't have a ton of optionality as far as the routes that the Warriors can go with making that a championship roster. But let's say you flip Jimmy Butler for, I don't know, you hear Kawhi. I don't know how reasonable that is, or AD. And you run out this older roster, but they just have all this experience, and you have LeBron and Curry, and you have Draymond and AD. Like, I'm just spitballing right now, but as a fan, I think it would be a very cool watch. I think he wouldn't have to go far from LA, so the family piece still ties in. But if I was a betting man, I think he's going back to LA. I just don't see him uprooting and going to another team. And maybe if he was going to play, 3, 4, 5 more years, but if he's only playing 1 or 2, I don't see it being very likely. But that's all I have for today. Thank you all so much for tuning back into the Peer Review Podcast. I'm so excited to be recording again, getting set up, working on the location. As you can see, I've been messing around with a few spots in my apartment, and I will keep that posted. But thank you all so much again for tuning in. Let me know your thoughts on free agency. Where's LeBron going? Will Giannis ever be traded by the Bucks? Comment below. Let me know. And this is the Peer Review, signing off.